The current devastating conflict that has engulfed the Middle East did not begin in a vacuum. It was ignited on February 28, 2026, with a massive, coordinated air campaign known as Operation Epic Fury. This surprise series of airstrikes, carried out jointly by the United States and Israel, targeted strategic military and leadership sites across Iran. The operation was, honestly, unprecedented in its scope and its primary target. In a move that sent shockwaves across the globe, the initial wave of strikes successfully hit a compound in Tehran, resulting in the death of Iran's long-reigning supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. The stated goal was to decapitate the Iranian regime's command structure and neutralize its nuclear and missile programs before they could become an even greater threat. Iran's response was, well, swift and furious, demonstrating that its capacity for retaliation had not been eliminated. Within hours of the announcement of Khamenei's death, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps launched a barrage of ballistic missiles. These were not aimed at empty desert, but at key Israeli population centers and critical U.S. military bases throughout the Middle East. Simultaneously, Iran executed a strategic maneuver with enormous global economic consequences. It declared the Strait of Hormuz, a vital artery for global oil shipments, a closed military zone. This act of defiance signaled that Iran, despite its leadership crisis, was prepared for a prolonged and multifaceted war, turning a regional shadow conflict into a direct and open confrontation. The leadership vacuum in Tehran was filled quickly, though not without chaos. Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the slain supreme leader, was named as his successor. His ascension was complicated by the fact that he himself had been injured in the very same airstrikes that killed his father. This chaotic transfer of power occurred as Iran's proxies were activated across the region. Hezbollah, the powerful militant group in Lebanon, began launching rockets and drones into northern Israel, opening a second front. In Yemen, the Houthi movement also joined the fray, targeting shipping lanes and firing long-range projectiles toward Israel, further expanding the battlefield and straining Israeli and American defensive systems. The initial days of the war set a brutal precedent. The U.S. and Israel continued their extensive bombing campaign, with some reports indicating that over 13,000 strikes have been conducted against targets in Iran since the conflict began. These strikes have targeted military infrastructure, industrial sites, and leadership locations. In response, Iran has launched more than 1,500 of its own strikes, primarily using its vast arsenal of ballistic and cruise missiles against Israel and neighboring Gulf countries that host American forces. This cycle of strike and counterstrike has defined the war, creating a terrifying new reality for millions of civilians caught in the crossfire and pushing the entire region toward a catastrophic tipping point. In recent days, the Iranian missile campaign against Israel has intensified in both its ferocity and its accuracy, bringing the war home to Israeli civilians in an unprecedented manner. On the evening of Sunday, April 5th, a powerful Iranian ballistic missile slammed into a residential building in the northern port city of Haifa. In a deeply concerning development for the Israel Defense Forces, the missile was not intercepted by Israel's multi-layered air defense network. The failure of systems like the Arrow and David's sling to stop the incoming projectile has raised serious questions. The direct hit caused 4 casualties and forced the immediate relocation of terrified residents from the damaged structure, a stark reminder of the vulnerability of Israeli cities. The assault did not end there. The following morning on Monday, April 6th, a fresh wave of missile barrages targeted the Haifa area once again. This time, air defense systems were activated, but the sheer volume of the attack created a different kind of danger. While many missiles were successfully intercepted, the sky over northern and central Israel was filled with falling debris. Fragments from the destroyed Iranian missiles rained down on more than 20 different locations, causing widespread panic and property damage. This tactic appears designed to overwhelm Israel's defenses, ensuring that even if the warheads don't reach their targets, the resulting shrapnel creates a hazard zone spanning dozens of square kilometers, terrorizing the population below. The attacks have also introduced more sophisticated and indiscriminate weaponry. In a particularly alarming incident, an Iranian-launched missile deployed cluster munitions over the densely populated city of Ramat Gan, a suburb of Tel Aviv. These weapons are designed to break apart in the air, scattering dozens or even hundreds of smaller submunitions, or bomblets, over a wide area. This attack caused extensive property damage across Ramat Gan. Making matters worse, Two of these submunitions struck perilously close to the Kiryat, the IDF's Central Command headquarters located in the heart of Tel Aviv. This demonstrated a clear Iranian intent to strike at the very nerve center of Israel's military. The ongoing missile strikes have fundamentally altered daily life in Israel. The constant threat has led to widespread fear and disruption. Since the war began, at least 20 people have been killed within Israel, a number that many fear will rise as the attacks grow more advanced. The use of cluster munitions has been particularly devastating, as unexploded bomblets can remain a deadly threat to civilians long after the initial attack. The damage to homes, businesses, and infrastructure in major cities like Haifa and Tel Aviv is a visible testament to the escalating nature of the conflict, proving that even with some of the world's most advanced air defenses, no city is entirely safe from Iran's reach. A central and honestly deeply confusing aspect of this conflict is the wildly divergent information coming from different sources regarding Iran's military capabilities. On one hand, top US and Israeli officials project an image of overwhelming success. The Pentagon has claimed that a staggering 90% of Iran's ballistic missile and drone capabilities have been degraded or destroyed since Operation Epic Fury began. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth went even further, stating that Iran's missile production infrastructure is now functionally defeated. Similarly, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that Israeli strikes had successfully destroyed 70% of Iran's steel production, a critical component for manufacturing missiles, and hit key petrochemical plants, halting the production of essential chemicals for solid rocket fuel. However, these optimistic official statements are starkly contradicted by assessments from within the intelligence community. A recent report, citing U.S. intelligence sources, paints a much grimmer picture. It suggests that approximately half of Iran's mobile missile launchers remain intact and operational. Furthermore, the report indicates that Iran still possesses thousands of combat-ready drones, leaving it poised to wreak absolute havoc across the region. This assessment suggests that while the US and Israeli air campaign has certainly inflicted damage, it has fallen far short of its goal of neutralizing Iran's offensive power. The discrepancy raises serious questions about whether the public is receiving an accurate portrayal of the war's progress. Even within the Israeli military there are differing views. Lieutenant Colonel Tet, an Israeli Air Force intelligence officer, provided a more sober analysis than his political leaders. He estimated that while the IDF initially believed Iran possessed around 2,500 ballistic missiles capable of reaching Israel, it still retains over 1,000. This means that even after 5 weeks of intense bombardment, Iran may still have about 40% of its long-range missile stockpile. This number is more than sufficient to sustain its current rate of attack for a considerable period, directly challenging the narrative that Iran's offensive capability has been functionally defeated, and suggesting a long and bloody fight still lies ahead. The patterns of Iran's missile launches also offer clues that contradict the official narrative of its defeat. While the daily number of missiles fired has decreased from a peak of 90 on the first day of the war to a more sustained rate of 10 to 15, the sophistication of the attacks has not. During the recent Passover holiday, the launch rate spiked to 30 per day. More importantly, military analysts have observed that the missiles being used in recent strikes are larger and carry more destructive payloads, including cluster munitions. This suggests that Iran is not running out of weapons, but is instead adapting its strategy, conserving its arsenal while using its more powerful systems for high-impact strikes. Amidst the escalating violence, a glimmer of hope for de-escalation emerged this week. On April 7th, a temporary 2-week ceasefire, brokered by Pakistan with significant diplomatic pressure from China, was announced. The terms of this fragile truce are conditional. Iran must agree to allow safe passage for commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, a critical concession for the global economy, though this passage will be coordinated with its own military. In return, the United States and Israel have agreed to suspend their extensive airstrikes on Iranian territory. This agreement represents the first significant diplomatic breakthrough since the war began, offering a desperately needed, albeit temporary, pause in hostilities. This breakthrough came after previous, more ambitious negotiations had stalled. For weeks, diplomats had been working on a 45-day ceasefire proposal, but talks broke down over Iran's core demands. Tehran has consistently rejected any temporary deal that does not include ironclad guarantees that the US and Israel will not resume their attacks once the ceasefire expires. Iran is also demanding significant reparations for the damage caused by the initial strikes. The distrust is profound, with Iranian leaders fearing that a temporary pause would simply allow their enemies to rearm and reposition for a new offensive, leaving them in a more vulnerable position than before. The diplomatic maneuvering has been fraught with tension and ultimatums. Just before the two-week deal was announced, President Trump had issued a stark deadline. He gave Iran until Tuesday, April 8th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, threatening to destroy Iran's power plants and bridges if it failed to comply. Iran's National Security Council publicly retorted that it would not open the strait as part of any temporary ceasefire, seeing its control over the waterway as its most powerful bargaining chip. This high-stakes brinkmanship highlights the immense difficulty in finding common ground, with both sides trying to secure strategic advantages through threats and negotiation. Even with the ceasefire technically in effect, its foundations appear shaky. Israel has already declared that the truce does not apply to its ongoing military operations against Hezbollah in Lebanon, meaning that one of the major fronts of the war will remain active. Furthermore, in the hours immediately following the announcement, new missile and drone attacks were reported in Kuwait, the UAE, and even Israel, raising questions about whether all factions are abiding by the agreement. Iran's government claims the US accepted its 10-point peace plan, but American officials insist they only agreed to discuss it, showcasing the deep chasm of interpretation that could cause the entire deal to collapse. The consequences of this war extend far beyond the borders of Iran and Israel, sending dangerous ripples across the entire Middle East and the global economy. Neighboring Gulf states have been drawn directly into the conflict. Iranian strikes have targeted their critical energy infrastructure, with a recent attack on Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG plants wiping out 17% of its output. Countries like the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain, which host significant US military presences, have become targets themselves, forcing them to heavily deplete their own precious interceptor missile stockpiles to defend their airspace. This has left them increasingly vulnerable, and has destabilized the delicate security balance of the entire Gulf region. The human cost of the conflict has been staggering, with civilians bearing the heaviest burden. In Lebanon, where Israel is conducting expanding ground operations against Hezbollah, the fighting has created a humanitarian crisis. The Lebanese Health Ministry reports that at least 182 people have been killed, while other sources place the total death toll from the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah at over 1,500. Inside Iran, the civilian population has suffered immensely under the weight of thousands of airstrikes. The human rights activists' news agency reports at least 1,665 civilians killed in Iran, including 244 children, a number tragically highlighted by a US strike on a girls' school that killed 175 people. Looking ahead, the conflict stands at a precarious crossroads. The current two-week ceasefire offers a brief window for diplomacy, but the fundamental disagreements remain. If talks fail, the war will likely resume with even greater intensity. This could involve more devastating strikes on civilian infrastructure, a potential expansion of Israel's ground operations in Lebanon, and even a direct confrontation in the Strait of Hormuz, which could cripple the global economy. Conversely, if the ceasefire holds and is extended, it could pave the way for a more durable, negotiated settlement, though the path to such an outcome is narrow and fraught with obstacles. Ultimately, this conflict matters to everyone, regardless of where they live. The war has already caused a 40% spike in US gasoline prices and choked a vital artery of global trade. A wider conflagration could trigger a global recession. Furthermore, the conflict risks drawing in other major powers, as evidenced by the UN Security Council's paralysis after Russia and China vetoed a resolution to secure the Strait of Hormuz, blaming US and Israeli aggression. The instability, the humanitarian suffering, and the economic fallout make the Iran-Israel war a global crisis. The search for a lasting peace is not just a regional necessity, it is a global imperative.